The sun hadn't yet peeked over the split rail fence that bordered my property, but I was already in the kitchen, the percolator hiccuping and sighing its familiar morning song. At 72, my days had settled into a gentle rhythm, a quiet symphony of crosswords, garden weeding, and long phone calls with my friend, Barbara. But that rhythm had been joyfully disrupted for the past 3 weeks. My 8-year-old grandson, Ethan, was staying with me while his parents, my son David and his wife Claire, navigated a punishing overlap of business trips and a major home renovation. I loved the energy he brought into the old house. The silence that once felt peaceful now felt like it was just waiting to be filled with the crash of Lego towers or the enthusiastic commentary of a kid playing video games. That particular Tuesday started like any other. I made pancakes shaped vaguely like dinosaurs, a specialty that earned me a sticky, syrup-scented hug. "Grandpa," Ethan mumbled through a mouthful of Triceratops, "can we go to the creek after? Look for frogs?" "Absolutely," I said, wiping a dollop of butter from his chin. "But chores first." "Your mom's orders." "That bed isn't going to make itself." He groaned with the profound despair only an 8-year-old can muster, but scampered off upstairs. I smiled, listening to the thumps and shuffles from the guest room. It was a good sound, a living sound. The morning passed in our usual, comfortable way. We tackled the bed, then the small pile of dishes. We spent a good hour at the creek, turning over smooth, cool stones, our pants rolled up to our knees. He found a tiny green frog, his face lighting up with a wonder that made my heart ache with a sweetness I'd almost forgotten. We named it Speedy before letting it go. Back at the house, we built a fortress out of blankets and couch cushions in the living room, a kingdom where the only law was that Grandpa had to ask permission to enter. After a lunch of grilled cheese sandwiches, the afternoon laziness set in. Ethan was curled in his fortress with a well-worn copy of a Dog Man book, and I settled into my favorite worn armchair with a historical novel. A deep, contented quiet settled over the house, broken only by the turning of pages and the distant hum of a lawnmower. That's when it started. At first, it was just a feeling, a prickling on the back of my neck, the sense of being watched. I shrugged it off, attributing it to a draft or my own wandering mind. But then, from within the blanket citadel, I heard it, a whisper, not the playful, theatrical whisper of a kid narrating a story to his toys. This was different, low, monotone, a continuous stream of sound that had no business coming from a child's mouth. I held my breath, straining to hear. I couldn't make out words. It was just a murmur, a susurrus that felt oddly private and cold. The room's temperature hadn't changed, but a chill seeped into my bones. "Ethan?" I called, keeping my voice light. "You okay in there?" The whispering stopped abruptly. A moment of dead silence, then the rustle of fabric. His small face, flushed and smiling, popped out from under a blue blanket. "Yeah, Grandpa. Just reading." I nodded, forcing a smile back. "Sounded like you were having quite a conversation." He just giggled, a perfectly normal, bubbly sound, and disappeared back into his fort. I tried to return to my book, but the words swam on the page. My mind replayed that whisper. It had been so empty and so full, all at once. An hour later, we were at the kitchen table, working on a 1,000-piece puzzle of the New York City skyline. We were focused on a particularly tricky section of the Empire State Building when it happened again. Ethan was reaching for a piece, his tongue poked out in concentration. Then, his hand stilled. His eyes, which had been darting over the puzzle, went strangely flat and fixed on the wall behind me. And the whisper started again. This time, I was closer. This time, I caught fragments. It wasn't English. The syllables were guttural, rhythmic, all hard consonants and jagged edges. It was a language I had never heard, and hearing it now, in my sunny, yellow kitchen, from my grandson's lips, felt like a violation of reality itself. Kath Raum, Vesht, Lomena. A wave of nausea rolled through me. This wasn't a game. This wasn't imagination. The voice was all wrong, too low, too ancient, too utterly devoid of the bright, boyish timbre I knew. "Ethan," I said, sharper than I intended. He blinked, the strange focus shattering. He looked at me, his clear blue eyes wide and confused. "What, Grandpa? What were you just saying?" He tilted his head. "Saying? I wasn't saying anything. I was thinking about this puzzle piece." He held up a blue-gray piece. "See? It looks like it could be a cloud or a window." I stared at him. There was no guile in his face, no hidden mischief. He genuinely had no idea. The fear that had been a cold trickle in my veins became a torrent. Something was very, very wrong. I managed to keep it together through dinner, microwave mac and cheese and hot dogs, his favorite. I laughed at his jokes, listened to his elaborate plans for a frog circus, but my mind was racing. Was he sick? A neurological thing? Could he be sleepwalking while awake? I vowed to call David and Claire that night, to gently suggest maybe a doctor's visit. But the day wasn't done with me. Bedtime was our ritual. Bath, 2 chapters of a book, Harry Potter, his current obsession, then lights out with the hallway lamp left on, just how he liked it. I tucked him in, smoothing the Star Wars comforter over his small frame. "Good night, my little Jedi," I said, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name, love, fear, a desperate need to protect. "Good night, Grandpa," he murmured, already snuggling down, his eyes drooping. I turned off the bedside lamp and was halfway to the door, my shadow long on the wall, when the whisper came again. It stopped me dead. This was the worst one yet. It wasn't just fragments. It was a clear, deliberate sentence, spoken in that same chilling, otherworldly monotone, and it was in perfect, unaccented English. "The man in the corner says he's sorry for the fire." Time stopped. The air left my lungs. My blood turned to ice water. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was frozen, paralyzed not just by the words, but by the sheer, horrific knowledge they carried. The fire. No one talked about the fire. Not David, not Claire, certainly not Ethan. He had never been told. He could not know. It happened when David was 10. We lived in our old colonial house on Maple Street, a faulty space heater in the den. I was at the grocery store. David was at a friend's. My father, Ethan's great-grandfather, a quiet, kind man named Walter, was babysitting. He'd fallen asleep in his favorite armchair in the corner of the den with a book on his lap. The fire marshal said it was fast, that he likely never woke up. The house was gutted. We lost everything, photographs, heirlooms, all of it. And we lost Walter. The grief nearly broke our family. It was a shadow we had lived with for decades, a pain so deep we had sealed it away, especially after Ethan was born. We wanted his world to be only light. David and Claire had agreed they would tell Ethan about his great-grandfather when he was older, carefully, leaving out the terrifying, brutal details of his death. And yet, the man in the corner says he's sorry for the fire. I forced myself to turn, my joints screaming in protest. The room was dim, lit only by the sliver of hall light. Ethan was lying still, his eyes closed, his breathing even. He looked peaceful, innocent, fast asleep. But the corner of the room, the corner opposite his bed, the one that was always a little darker, the one where the old rocking chair sat, that corner now felt occupied. The darkness there seemed thicker, a pooling of shadow that resisted the light. I stared, my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of primal fear. I saw nothing, but I felt something, a presence, a profound, weary sadness that seemed to leach the warmth from the very air. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my armchair downstairs, a cold cup of tea forgotten beside me, staring into the dark. My mind churned through explanations and came up empty. Coincidence? A monstrous, impossible coincidence. Had he overheard something? David and I never spoke of it. Claire didn't know the specifics. A memory from a past life. The concepts swirled, nonsensical and terrifying. All I knew for certain was that my grandson, in some unknowable state, had channeled a message from a man who died in a fire over 30 years ago. A man who was sorry. The next morning, Ethan bounced into the kitchen, sunny and refreshed. "Grandpa, can we have dinosaur eggs today?" he asked, meaning the pancakes with blueberries baked inside. I looked at him, searching his face for any sign of the previous night's haunting. There was none. Just the sweet, open countenance of my grandson. "Sure thing, buddy," I managed, my voice gravelly. He ate with his usual gusto, chattering about a new Minecraft world he wanted to build. I nodded, smiled, but I was a ghost in my own kitchen. The sunlight felt thin. The familiar objects of my life, the clock shaped like a cat, the fridge magnets from various vacations, seemed like stage props, meaningless. After breakfast, he ran into the living room to turn on the TV. I stayed at the table, my head in my hands. I had to do something. But what? Call a priest? A child psychologist? Tell David his son was whispering apologies from the grave? They'd think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. The day passed in a fog. I was overly attentive, watching Ethan's every move, listening for the slightest change in his tone. He seemed perfectly normal. We played cards. We took a walk. The whisper did not return. The oppressive feeling in the house had lifted, leaving only my own dread behind. That evening, after another subdued dinner, Ethan was drawing at the coffee table. I was pretending to read the newspaper. He looked up, crayon in hand. "Grandpa?" "Yes, Ethan." "Did you know I had another grandpa? A great one?" The paper crinkled in my grip. "What do you mean, Buddy. The old man. He's nice. He visits sometimes when I'm dreaming. He told me his name is Walter. He said he's my family. Tears sprang to my eyes, hot and sudden. I put the paper down slowly. Walter. I repeated the name, a sacred painful relic on my tongue. Yeah, he's kinda sad. He said he had to go away a long time ago because of a big mistake. He said he's been trying to talk to Daddy, but Daddy can't hear him. Ethan went back to his drawing, adding a green sun to a purple sky. He likes that I can hear him. He says it's easier when I'm almost asleep. The casual, matter-of-fact delivery was almost more shocking than the whisper itself. To Ethan, this wasn't a horror story. It was just information. A new, if slightly sad, fact about his family. What else does he say? I asked, my throat tight. Ethan shrugged, not looking up from his artwork. Not much. He just sits in the corner. He's really quiet. Last night, he wanted me to tell you he was sorry. Did I tell you? I had a weird dream. The final piece clicked into place, not with a crash, but with a soft, devastating sigh. It wasn't possession. It wasn't a sickness. It was a connection. A sensitive, open channel of a child, bridging a gap that adults, with our walls of logic and grief, had long since cemented over. Walter wasn't a malevolent spirit. He was a remorseful soul, trapped by his final, tragic accident, seeking forgiveness from the son who couldn't hear him, finding a conduit in the innocent grandson. A profound calm settled over my panic. The unknown was still terrifying, but it had a shape now. It had a name, and that name was family. Thank you for telling me, Ethan, I said, my voice trembling only slightly. That's very important. I didn't call a priest. I didn't call a doctor. That night, after Ethan was in bed, I checked the corner. It was just a corner. I called my son. David, I said when the pleasantries were over. I need to talk to you about something. About your dad. There was a long silence on the other end. What about him? David's voice was guarded, the old pain immediately rising to the surface. I think he might be trying to reach you. Through Ethan, I heard his sharp intake of breath. What are you talking about, Dad? Is Ethan okay? He's perfectly okay. Better than okay. But something has happened. And I told him everything. From the first strange whisper to Ethan's daytime revelation. I braced for skepticism, for anger, for concern about my mental state. Instead, after another long silence, David's voice came through, thick with tears. He's sorry? That's what he said. David broke down then. 30 years of stifled grief, of a child's confused anger at a grandfather who fell asleep and let the house burn, of a man's enduring love for his father. It all came flooding out. They talked for over an hour. I mostly listened, my own tears falling quietly. We didn't reach any easy conclusions. We didn't solve the mystery of the afterlife. But we opened a door that had been sealed shut by trauma. The next weekend, David and Claire came to pick Ethan up. The renovation was done. We all had lunch together, and the atmosphere was different. Lighter, yet more significant. David looked at his son with a new, wondering tenderness. Later, as they were loading Ethan's suitcase into the car, David pulled me aside on the porch. I believe you, Dad, he said quietly. I don't understand it, but I believe you. Last night, for the first time in decades, I dreamed of my father. He wasn't in the fire. He was just in his garden, smiling. He didn't say anything. He just smiled. I put a hand on his shoulder, squeezing it. Ethan ran back up the steps for a final hug. Bye, Grandpa. Thanks for the frog hunt. I knelt down and pulled him close, breathing in the smell of shampoo and boyhood. Anytime, my brave little man, I whispered into his hair. You listen to those quiet voices, okay? But you only talk to the nice ones. He pulled back and looked at me with those clear, knowing eyes that seemed to hold secrets older than he was. I know, Grandpa. Walter's nice. He says he can rest now. He says thank you. Then he turned and skipped down the path to his parents, a beacon of light between them. I stood on the porch, watching their car disappear down the country road. The house behind me was quiet again, but the silence was different now. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. It held the echo of a whisper that had carried a burden of guilt across generations and finally set it down. The chill was gone. In its